any tennis players out there? I'm just wondering, have you heard of the new sport called quiet tennis? It's like the normal tennis without a racket.
Gotcha.
So, Trustee Willie, welcome. Like, I don't think we've formally met.
Nice to meet you.
So, I run this joint here. Chief bottle washer, vineyard mower, sprayer, you know, but I love it because I'm still here. So, do we have slides?
True.
Do we have this?
Gina? Yeah.
Oh, I thought I sent them.
Yeah, they were in the package.
Yeah.
We did see them in the package.
Okay. Well, that was another cute little. We have a picture of, when the center opened and we moved in here in January of 2015. So the graduating class of 2016 did their fermentation over at the Cornell Ag and Tech Farm, which is a city and county cooperative across the block from us in this little square that we all end up leasing from Cornell. And then we moved here because we had great grant money. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this awesome facility. So for those of you who have never toured the place, I will give you a quick tour afterwards. And then we can do some other fun things. But yeah, so I had a picture of Paul during our very first harvest here, which would have been in the fall of 2016. He had short hair, was really brown. He looked extremely scholarly. And then fast forward to this past fall of 24, he's got long hair. It's very gray. Mine isn't. And he's got it in a bun and he's all relaxed and teaching the students. So it was a cute little transition. But yeah, so we've been here since 2015. And since that time, we have developed the certificate program, which has our core classes of viticulture and winemaking. There's only one class that they don't have to take. It's either a vineyard or a winemaking class. And this past spring, it just launched and went totally online. And for those of you that aren't very familiar with the programs, the associate or the certificate, it's intensely hands-on. Like these students are hand harvesting their own grapes. They're doing their own analyses. They have access to this building 7 days a week by their student ID card if they are taking classes here. And then if they are doing fermentation in the winery, they have ID access into the winery so that they can do morning and night, 7 days a week monitoring. Because that's what we do in the real world. Oh, yes, so okay, there we go. This forward. Okay. So here's Paul. Right? He's got his glasses. It's very studious, right? And the funny thing about this graduate, Marta Seymour, is a new adjunct of ours. She transferred to Cornell, got her bachelor's in enology and viticulture, and then went on to get her master's from the U of R in fermentation biology. Wow. And he's as shocked as I am that, I'm still here. Then we fast forward to the most recent, if you can see the little bun Paul has. He's not here to take my jabs. But this was actually the first year students get their hands dirty in their fall viticulture class because they help the second year students harvest their grapes. First years are also responsible for harvesting the vineyard, the small vineyard that's out here. And that is what we put into our newest bottling of Petnap. And this is our second year that we've done that. So that's a semi-light sparkling wine. It finishes a first fermentation in the bottle. And then what else would I like to tell you the cool things that we've been doing? Created a scholarship for one lucky student to go during winter break to do a 3-credit traveling wine, gastronomy, sustainability course that starts in Provence, goes to Italy, So far, it's been Florence for 2 years and finishes in Barcelona. So they have 3 weeks of a really intense, amazing program. And both of the students that went through it changed their life.
You won awards too.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Steve. Keep me on track. So we have been licensed since the summer of 2015. So that means that our wine that we bottle can then be sold out into the general public. And being licensed, we enter the New York Wine Classic every year. And we started that in the summer of 2016, and every year we have entered their wines, the students have medaled. Some years, all of their wines have medaled. So I'm waiting on the most recent, which would have been 2023's vintage, which was Fresca Leyenda. And the artist came from Colombia, South America, to go through the art degree program and based her decision on the label contest. I think that's
Any questions for Gina?
yes.
Gina, when you first started out, you were harvesting grapes from, I think, maybe Fox Run was a partner here.
We were harvesting, let's see, we went to ravines. We did at the time, what's near your kitchen now.
Yeah.
The grapes,
Yeah.
and those grapevines aren't even labeled. I don't know if they still have them there, but they didn't have the varieties well labeled there. But it was at ravines that we purchased some grapes. And then in summer of 2013, we planted the vineyard that was donated to us and the Finger Lakes Grape Program, which is a cooperative of Cornell. And that is housed at Anthony Road Wine Company.
Anthony Road, so
Yep.
they're our partner.
They are,
Okay.
yeah, they make, it's like the wineries don't have a ton of money, but what they do give just is,
Terrific. It's nice to see
Yeah.
that coordination between this center and the commercial growers.
it's only 2.5 acres. It's more grapes than we ever need for what we make. Because we're a small team, to sell all that wine would require people.
The salesperson.
Yeah, salesperson. Yeah,
Thank you.
they make great wines.
Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. Should I leave this room?
Tasting later?
Yes. Of the most current bottling, 2021.
Strike that from the minutes. And on to business. Review of the May 7th committee meeting minutes. Are there any changes, adjustments, questions? Hearing none. Move on to Dr. Abatis with the enrollment update.
Dr. Arbetis is not able to make it because there are other priorities in life tonight, and also her two key leaders are also at conferences. The most important thing in her life tonight is her anniversary with her husband, and so said we'll be able to handle it. And as you can see from the report, that we're down about 2% in terms of headcount, but up in FTEs by about 0.3%. One of the things that we've had for the summer, we're also down about 2%, but we're also up about 1% in FTEs. And that's pretty good because the headcount drop, we had not deregistered students for the past 2 years, several years due to COVID, and 3 years, Jason, thank you, 2, okay. I had it right, why'd you put up your fingers? I got confused. Okay, but so the deregistration was started up again. We lost about 275 students, but of those, a number of them have been coming back. But it's we're also going to be doing ongoing deregistration over the summertime itself for the students because we want to make sure we're also balancing the financial needs of the college and bad debt down the road. And that's our report.
Any questions for Dr. Nye? Here's your chance, guys. No? All right. Thank you, Dr. Nye. And we'll move on to student success module, concurrent enrollment, interactive video conferencing courses. Mr. Frank, Ms. Blake.
Unfortunately, Ms. Blake can't be here tonight.
Another
And the
anniversary.
commitments, so you're stuck with me for both of these. So, you know, my name is Fred Fink. I've been here at FLCC for nearly 25 years. And I'm here to talk to you tonight about Gemini. We lost it, there we go. And our interactive video classrooms. APCI provided me with updated Gemini enrollment, and I wanted to share a little bit here tonight. I'm sure you have seen this before, but I wanted to provide a little bit of context for some of the items that you see on here. You can see from 2019 all the way through our current academic year, Gemini was growing, but in 2022, 23, up to current, you can see that our number of, our head count for Gemini has been decreasing, and correlated with that, we have an FTE decrease as well. Remembering that this year, we actually changed our course registration processes. We've moved full year course registrations to the fall. You can see we went from 364 to 512, but we dropped off significantly here. It makes at this point in time difficult to compare semester to semester. So I have this on here from APCI to provide a full academic year picture. And so when I saw this, what also may be impacting that. And so I looked at last year's enrollment compared with this year, and you can see that my number of high school seniors has dropped. My number of high school juniors has dropped. So what I'm seeing is across the board in these grade levels, 10th, 11th, and 12th, I'm seeing declines across the board. And that tells me that's that shift that we're seeing, that demographic shift. The part that is positive here is you can see we've increased in our freshmen. So our freshmen have a very limited number of courses that they can participate in. And the primary one is an introduction to college success.
Fred,
Yeah. Oh,
we lost connection.
uh-oh.
Share definitely.
And that introduction to college courses is something that we're rolling out with our current new early college high school projects, one here in Geneva and Waterloo that you may have already heard about. So there you're Geneva and Waterloo students who are participating in that early college high school program. Every year, Gemini churns a little bit. We have instructors who retire. We've had a few retire from us, and we replace them with new Gemini instructors. But our net loss of 40 only resulted in 26 new ones. So that means schools may not have replaced those instructors, or because of the shrinking size of our schools, some Gemini instructors are being reassigned to other assignments and no longer able to cover those Gemini course sections. But we continue to add new course sections. I already have some already for this upcoming year, and we have prospects for more, but we're still facing that same demographic challenge that all of us have been seeing.
Just a quick,
Now this thing, just go ahead.
just a quick question
Yeah.
for you. So these are registrations.
Yeah.
Are the registrants or students also completing that percentage? Maybe you're gonna cover that and so forth. Those that are registering are in fact hitting the finish line? Or is it 90%, 95% that ultimately, I should say, obtain that Gemini course credit?
It's a very high number.
It is.
It's in the 90s for sure.
Okay.
All right, so am I working again or maybe not? It should be. All right. One of the things that we're doing to help address that instructor loss is the distance learning partnership that you guys may have already be familiar with. FLCC received a U.S. Department of Agriculture grant that equipped schools with the technology to share coursework from school district to school district. It allows them to partner and share their instructors. So districts can share Gemini courses or even a high school course for that matter. And FLCC can also deliver courses directly to a high school audience. So we test drove that a little bit this past semester and it worked out well. But FLCC will also be able to deliver courses directly to a high school audience. We're working with another BOCES outside this region because they have that model currently operating and they're kind of serving as a liaison for us for getting this program up and running.
Quick question.
Yes,
Which districts are participating in that?
right here they are. Great time.
So right here, you can see the 8 schools that are participating with us this year. And every time we ask schools what courses they would love to have access to, the answers we get are healthcare, computing science, and general education courses for students who are transferring on to other institutions. And the schools that are participating with us here are listed. Most of those are in Wayne County, which is probably struggling even more so with student decline and therefore teacher shortage. So you can see 6 of the 8.
That's actually encouraging.
Here is the schedule that we put together for those schools. You can see healthcare, you can see psych and social for transferability. You can also see computer science that they wanted as well, being offered to them online. And so we feel this schedule, by working with the provost and the academic department chairs, we're able to put this schedule together in hopes that it meets the needs of their district based on those particular requests. And I was surprised to learn that also a number of schools requested business. So you can see some business courses in there. Patrick Ray is going to be teaching these himself. So that's the schedule right there that we came up with. That methodology for coming up with that schedule was based on the school district specifically requesting those areas and offering 2 sections of each of those courses. I'm going to flip back just for a second. You can see I'm offering 2 sections here. Psych and sociology gets 2 sections, psych gets 2 sections. The reason for that 2 sections is because our biggest barrier to this has to do with bell schedules. No one's bell schedules align. And so 2 schools, although located right next door to one another, may have bell schedules that differ by 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And so we can't lose that instructional time. So what schools are going to have to do is use like study halls and those kinds of things to make it so that the student can balance both their FLCC courses as well as their high school schedule. So it's really that last schedule tends to target the courses they wanted and multiple sections to address the bell schedules. And it's really the biggest barrier to this. And so ultimately though, we're hoping that these interactive video classes provide schools that extra opportunity that the students are missing out on by losing those key instructors at their school districts. And that was it. Does anyone have any other questions for me?
The $1 billion USDA grant, is that those dollars all in? Are we anticipating any challenges federally?
Those dollars came in a while ago, so they're fine, and those purchases have been made. Actually, it was delayed a little bit. We had a procurement challenge with our bid process, but that's all been resolved. All of this equipment is already in these schools, already been tested, and everything is there and done. Yes.
I did have one other, homeschool
Yes.
students. Are we seeing an attraction to some of the Gemini courses for that audience?
Right, so homeschool students don't participate in Gemini because Gemini is offered in their high school. And so our homeschool students participate with us through our other program called Early College Scholars.
Okay.
And yes, we have a very robust number of our homeschool students participate in that program.
Early college scholars. Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks.
Other questions for?
and I set my water and my paper over there to get it on my way out.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thanks, bro.
Move on to review some resolutions. Adjustment in the FLCC professional services positions roster. Jennifer.
We have 4 job descriptions that are here tonight. The first is the Director of Assessment, Planning, and Continuous Improvement, which is a revised job description replacing the Associate Director of Assessment, Planning, and Continuous Improvement. This is a 12-month college-funded position, and it's moving from Group B to Group A in the Professional Association. The second is the Director for Center for Student Success, which is a revised job description replacing the Director of Academic Success and Access Programs. And this revision is part of the reorganization of the Academic and Student Affairs Division. This is a 12-month college funded position, which is remaining in Group A of the Professional Association. The third is the Director of Workforce, Career, and Experiential Learning, which is a revised job description, replacing the Director of Workforce and Career Solutions. This is a 12-month college funded position, which is remaining in Group A of the Professional Association. And the last is the Disability Services Manager, which is a revised job description, replacing the Disability Services Coordinator. As part of the restructuring of student affairs, the disability services area needed a realignment of staffing. This is a 12-month college funded position, moving from Group D to Group C in the Professional Association.
Summary, everything was in the packet. Any questions? No. None, no. Well done, thank you. And adding cleanup, Lauren, take us through got a couple.
Yes, I am here this evening with two resolutions for your consideration. The first is a change to the commencement date for 2026. So it was scheduled originally for the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. So based on that, we are suggesting that it be changed to Thursday, which is May 21st, which is the day immediately after the end of classes. So classes end on Wednesday, May 20th, and commencement would be the evening of Thursday, the 21st.
Yeah, it is.
So any
So our nursing would also be done on that same,
we'd have to look at, yeah, so for the, as we did this year with the nursing and the paramedic pinning and patching, yes, we will have to explore that. Yes,
Questions? Good.
okay. And then the second is the integration, it's a policy revision, the integration of academic integrity and grievance policy. And there were really three primary purposes for that. One was to clearly define the violations. Secondly, to clarify the procedures. And thirdly, to clarify, ensure the roles. So this process had been housed under student affairs and we're moving it under academic affairs.
Questions? Well done, thank you.
Thank you.
Strategic thought presentation. Deborah, if you could bring the board up to date on our strategic plan.
I'll do my best. I'm gonna borrow Donna's spot for a minute until she gets here, because it is helpful for me to be able to see some of the numbers in front of me. So hi, everyone. Nice to see you again. It's strategic plan time. Last month it was retention time, so always some time. So we're going to talk a little bit about the strategic plan. I have a few slides at the end to share with you that you haven't seen yet. That we're sort of working on some new ways of looking at things. So that's exciting. So you can look forward to that towards the end, in case you need a little motivation to get through all these numbers. And I'll remind you throughout, we're gonna focus a lot on sort of what are we tracking, what are we reporting, where are we with things. We have a number of lagging indicators. So indicators that I either don't have data on yet, or I don't get data on until the fall. So it's always sort of this game where we're looking at what do we have, what will we be getting. So I'll be sort of walking you through that, as well as, when possible, sharing impressions about where we think the data are going. But we may not yet have the final data in, for example, from this semester, we don't have those data certified yet, things like that. So, and then I'll be back with you in the fall again to look at some of this and continue to catch up on some of those lacking indicators. Okay. So
Do I have a clicker?
I can just. It's not fancy.
Okay. It doesn't have any animation on
Okay. So let's just start off with talking a little bit about what, just numerically, this idea of what we're tracking and what we're reporting. So we have, our three buckets, as I'm fond of calling them, strands, pillars, three areas that we're focused on in our strategic plan. And there are a number of sub goals under each of those, and I'll get into some more detail about that in a few minutes. But our first one is student success, the second one is opportunity and innovation, and community and industry engagement. Now, there is overlap here. There are things that are good for student success that are also opportunity and innovation and so forth and so on. But for the purposes of the plan, we try to sort of keep things slightly more discrete just so that we can continue to track them. So we have, based on the plan we wrote, a number of metrics in each of those categories. For each of those, we have baseline data on some of them because we've gone through a full cycle and we have that baseline data. Or we have process data, meaning we have new processes in place, we're getting those data, and eventually that will, it'll move into baseline or impact data. And then we have a couple of ones where we're really still working through how we're collecting it or what is happening with that as we move through what data sources are available, how do we track things like that. So looking then in bucket number one, student success, what are the goals we're looking at? We want to be able to really talk about individualized student support. And you've heard lots and lots about this. This is that whole wraparound, this is that retention. And it was a very fundamental shift a couple of years ago. Now it feels like, oh, of course, this is what we're doing because we've been doing it for a couple of years ago. But I'll remind everyone that 2 years ago, that was not part of the work we did here. So that's a pretty fundamental shift. And it's one of the major goals of this strategic plan. Really looking at retaining and improving first year and in particular first semester students as the students that have the highest risk, and our metrics are based on that. Some of the interventions that are targeted around that are just starting. So when we're just starting it, that's when we get into, okay, if this is just coming online, how do we get the data from it? What is that going to look like eventually? And then when we talk about lagging indicators, one of my favorites, increasing student completion, we need a pretty long time to see them go all the way through. So we're tracking all of that, but we don't have a lot of, if actually any, data where we say, okay, we started this focus with this strategic plan and we put this intervention into place. And now we've had 2 years or better, 3 years for our students, or better, 6 years if they're part-time, to actually see the impact. So some of these indicators, when I say lagging, I like really mean lagging, right? It takes us a while to get there. But that helps us understand where we're trying to go with student success. So what are we tracking? In addition to some of the things that you all have put into your new policy, the strategic plan itself calls out retention, completion, assessment, which looks at student learning specifically, and course success, which is how students are doing it. So we're really particularly looking at those items. So we've reported quite a bit on retention here. And we'll report again on in the fall, but looking at our most recent retention, which we spent quite a bit of time on last board meeting, so I won't belabor that. Our fall to spring retention is back at pre-COVID levels. So just in the sort of history of looking at retention, when you look at our retention data over, say, a 10 or 7-year time period, you have this pretty steady picture, but then you have COVID and you have this major fall that happens during COVID. So we've sort of reoriented when we're thinking about it is, first, we need to get back to stasis, and then we work from there. So the good news is we're pretty much In fall to spring, we're back to stasis, we're back at pre-COVID levels, and in fall to fall, which is influenced obviously by fall to spring, right? First, you gotta get them to the spring before you can get them to the fall. So again, when we think about lagging indicators, that fall to spring is telling us fall to fall might begin to get better. Our fall to fall is almost back, as you might remember from my December presentation, because I'm sure you commit them all to memory and replay them. But the fall to fall is just below pre-COVID levels. So we're moving the direction we want, and we're sort of poised to get to that next step. But we had to sort of climb out of that place that we got during COVID. So that's good news. And then, as I shared with you last time, some of our early indicators for some of our interventions, when we're really looking at impact on equities, we're having very positive signs that those interventions are making a difference, in particular for students of color. But more to come, right? That's one time around the sun, right? So we have to keep going to really see this hold. Where are we? And that's going to be something I may say a lot tonight, right? We're sort of at this precipice of what's next. Do we repeat? Do we see this as we're in year 2 of our strategic plan? Okay, so Dr. Nye asked me when I was speaking with the cabinet about, these similar topics. Well, so when we think about retention in particular, and we think about the fact that we decided 2 years ago to go in pretty heavily, and it's the area where we have interventions in place, we're beginning to get data back. What does that mean in terms of staffing? What does that mean in terms of, what we're actually doing? And so what's interesting here is just seeing the number of grant-funded roles that are now on this campus supporting student retention. So 2 years ago, that didn't exist. So yes, we need to keep going. We need to see what else happens. We really just got 1 year of data, but we have a totally different infrastructure. And that infrastructure comes from a lot of different places, right? So New York State is funding some of it, and SUNY and Title III and internal strategic plan grant money. So there's a lot of different things, different funding sources supporting that, but it's a very different infrastructure picture. This slide didn't exist 2 years ago. There was no slide to this. And I think that's important to be thinking about from your perspective.
Just a general question. Assuming that eventually the data will all support that all those positions are really critical
Right,
to success. And understanding that grant programs don't last
forever. That's right.
How do we develop a strategy to absorb those positions so that over time,
We're continuing to support.
we
this.
just keep
Yeah.
doing what we know works and we're not worried or relying on another grant that may or may not come?
Yeah.
Part of it I've always asked, since I've been here is, and it's not the best term for academia, but what's the return on investment? And if you can demonstrate return on investment, if you can demonstrate that has brought greater value, greater vitality to the college, then we need to be able to, exactly what you said, incorporate it in, because we can say, these people brought in this many more students to help this many more students succeed. Or from a non-academic capacity, our Space 36 has demonstrated they're not completely self-sufficient, which is what the requirement the board provided originally, but it's close enough from what they're doing. And then with the intangible value that's relevant and palpable, then it's worthwhile to keep, even though it wasn't 100% self. So the generality is it has to be self-sufficient or provide sufficient tangible or intangible value that we can demonstrate to you, the board, that we should absorb it.
Okay.
And then it's also going to the state, going to the county, right, and getting a response with a grant. So the state with ASAP is a key example. They're looking at these methods. And this is something that they're continuing to fund. So that's another way that we look at with what these results come out with. How do we push that? to those other funding sources.
Yeah.
And ASAP is expanding, that as soon as fully invested, at least. But,
You know,
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, and when we discuss the budget later on, I want to bring that around again, but.
Yeah.
um,
And I also have to say, sometimes, we just need to chase, not a good term either, but we need to chase grant money. Because anytime we can get funds that can help increase capacity, some will work, some won't. But the amount of grant monies that we're bringing in that over the past several years is providing great value to do some of the things that we're doing. And so, but some of them won't work and it's a risk, but it's a risk well worth taking.
I think the general premise that has been set up through the strategic plan grants and then some of these other, broad stroke strategic initiative grants, regardless of where that funding is coming from, they do really help us hone in on those conversations, right? And they allow us the flexibility to build an initiative, to look at whether it's working, to continually review it, to continue to speak with you, the board, about how things are going, and then make decisions that make sense. And that unto itself is a benefit, I think, to what was started with the strategic plan grant process. It sort of put that mentality into the way we're thinking about trying things and working on things and thinking through innovation in very real and tangible, but data-driven ways. Okay, so completion, as I mentioned, the lagging of the lag of the lag of all of our indicators. So while, we are continuing to track our completion rates, and we will continue to do that and report them to you. Right now, we're talking about cohorts from 2021, 2022. So they're cohorts that actually didn't get any of the sort of interventions that we're really talking about. Or in some cases, they're now getting them, but they didn't get them when they were a first-year student. So completion, it takes a while, but we're continuing to look at it, and it's an important metric to keep an eye on. And the good news is, similarly to our retention, is where we have early signs of a rebound. We have a sense that we're coming out of those COVID real dips, and we're getting back to stasis and beyond, so that we can build back to where we want to be.
Just one thing about those COVID dips, it was because of the conditions. We also enrolled far more students than most of the other colleges did, and it came with a price, that they were there under the riskiest times to go to college. And so we pay a price on the back end, but we at least had the opportunity to have more students trying to pursue their education during that time frame than a lot of other colleges did. Made more vital in those colleges too.
And we have also seen a higher number of returning students, which are likely students coming back after that. But that's another one, we have to play it out and see where that goes. In student success, I skipped one, sorry. This is one of the ones where we're really working on the infrastructure. So we don't have hard numbers from it yet, but we've been working over the past 2 years to build the assessment platform, the watermark, the data warehouse, all of these particular things. And what we see now going into this next year is the highest number of programs being assessed, the highest number of courses being assessed. So we're now poised a year from now to come back and say, okay, we did that process work, we're into the assessment work, here's our first results. Which 2 years into the strategic plan is actually, we're about a year ahead of where I thought we would be, so that's exciting. So more to come. Course success is one that we just began to look at about a year ago, and I think one of the things that has been exciting about that is that it has allowed us to have new conversations, and for my colleagues in ASA to have a new infrastructure for structured conversations about, hey, why are we struggling in this course? Why are we struggling in this section of this course? Because sometimes it's a section, sometimes it's a course. So again, creating that data set and allowing that to be available, when before it was just not something that was looked at. That was the first big step in the strategic plan. We know that in 22-23, we were at about 5% of the courses had what we call a high failure rate, so that's 30% and above. And we were about the same last year. We don't have the data from this year yet. We won't get that till the summer. So in the fall, I'll come back and let you know where we are. Hopefully we begin to see some movement. It may be in the year after, since the data just started to get used this year, but that's another one where infrastructure is now there. We're counting it, we're using it, the interventions in place. Let's see where it goes. So that's exciting. Okay, so moving on to the next bucket, opportunity and innovation. So what are our goals? Same thing, right? We start here and then we try to say, what are sort of our major focus areas? Some of these focus areas will change as we progress or get interpreted differently. So AI is a really big example of that, right? We're doing a huge amount of work with AI that easily falls under opportunity and innovation and easily falls under community engagement. Wasn't necessarily called out as a particular goal, but if you look at engage the college community and professional learning opportunities, a huge amount of what we're doing in that and in counting that is around AI. So sometimes things emerge specifically and sometimes things emerge under the goals that we've set. So these are the sort of overall goals. What are we tracking specifically? So we're looking at the recruitment and retention of diverse faculty and students. We're looking at new market recruitment. This has primarily been around international students in the last couple of years. That may change, or we may begin to track some other areas as well, but that's been primarily how we defined it, at least initially. The creation of stackable credentials is one that we're continuing to look at because that's an opportunity to engage in a lot of different initiatives and to collaborate with our community. And then the faculty use of early alert software as a very specific opportunity that obviously crosses into student success, but it's an opportunity to really be innovative in the way we're thinking.
Deborah, before you go, when you think about international students, you think about the political environment, you might question why do that. But one of them that I asked that we pursue was international online students. And we can't do everything, but we need to find niches. And there's, to me, an interesting niche from our former student vice president for Student Corporation coming from Delhi, India. And the original story was he called 4 colleges in the I-90 corridor, 4 two-year colleges. And of the 4, we're the only ones that answered his call. But then when you dug in deeper to it, I spent about half an hour, 40 minutes on a WebEx with him. And the major reason that he was doing what he's doing is he wanted to take courses that were inexpensive, that would count towards going towards a really good school when he finally got his F1 visa. How many students are going to be out there in the next year, 2, 3 years, or even under a steady state that you could market for, come take courses? And that was a problem, or in certain terms of some of the thought process, because, well, they're not matriculated students. Well, that's okay. Those types of students help the vitality of the rest of the students that are here that are matriculated, because we have more resources to support them. And then you'll get some like Raj that was here, that they had a wonderful experience. The other thing we need to go back and for you to do that is, how do we use you as a resource back home in Delhi? Thank you. I'm off myself.
Be an ambassador for us.
Yep.
Yeah.
So really, Dr. Nye said that better than I can say, but for just from a pure like metrics perspective, the interventions that he's talking about, recruiting online, signing contracts to recruit specifically both for face-to-face and online, those have primarily gone into place this year, right? So the first year of the strategic plan, we started looking at it, we started thinking about it, we started doing the actions, and then this year we put them into place. So we know that in fall 24, we had 29 international students, and in fall 25, we had 31. Not much of a difference there. So the question is, now that we've put an intervention into place, what's next? We don't know yet. So stay tuned. We'll find out in fall 25, and we'll come back and update that. And in that point also, to Dr. Nye's point, that's when disaggregation of face-to-face, online, what country, where did we have contracts in place? what depth of intervention was in place, that's when we can start to really sort of disaggregate around that. So, another stay tuned, but we know what we're doing and where we're going. Political environment helps. Okay, so the next item that we're tracking, recruitment and retention of diverse faculty, staff, and students. So this is an area that we also needed to build an infrastructure for, not on the student side, but on the employee side. So really making sure that we had high quality data and that those data were cleaned up and correct and valid and all of those types of things. And our colleagues in HR have been working hard on that throughout this year. There have also been some legal changes in the way items are defined, either by the federal government or the state government. So all of that plays into what we see when we look at the beginning state and now is we're pretty much about the same. So we're sort of poised to say, what's next? What are we putting into place now that we have a better tracking mechanism on the employee side? We have seen a very slight shift in about a 2% increase in employees identifying as students or as faculty and staff of color. However, that's what we call in the biz a false friend, because we see a corresponding drop in unknown, which means people switch categories as part of the data cleanup. That's not a problem. That means we're doing the right thing. We're getting we're working on it. We're understanding where we are. And that's how we then can put strategy in place. But we're essentially where we were with a better data infrastructure, and you can see those numbers on the screen. Okay. Dynamic creation of stackable credentials is always has been one we've actually, in a sort of different form, we're working on in our previous strategic plan as well. And I think you've had briefs on sort of specific aspects of this from different folks who are working on those particular items. But we do have some that are up and coming. ASL 24-25 it's just gone into circulation, and podcasting is next up. And then you've heard quite a bit about the welding, and that is also a particular credential that came online this year with its first class, but the actual tracking of that with more than one class will proceed from here. The second class has not happened yet. So more to come, more to track, but it continues to be an area that we're focusing on. Okay, so this is one that I'm pretty excited about. And I have absolutely nothing to do with it. It's all Laura. But we've had early alert software since I started here. So 11 years ago, my first faculty meeting, Larry Dugan introduced it to the faculty and said, hey, we're going to use this. We're going to use this thing. So it's been around for a while. But it wasn't necessarily being used in a way that was really effectively and efficiently and consistently getting information for folks to follow up on. And then I will couple that with saying, remember that slide I showed you with all those people that we've been able to add to work on retention? Those are the people that get those early alert flags and do something. So we have sort of a 1-2 punch here. We have the need to make sure we are actually and regularly and consistently raising a flag and saying, I'm worried about this student. And we have to have an infrastructure that can respond to that flag. 2 years ago, we had neither of those. We might have had the software, but we didn't have either of those pieces. So we built the infrastructure, and my colleagues in ASA have been really, really working with the faculty and saying, we have these people here to help your students, but you have to help us help them. And the results are quite remarkable in 1 year. We have a very large increase in the number of flags being raised. And that's a huge step in then continuing to follow some of those other lagging indicators that I talked about. This is where the first moment happens when we're talking about trying to retain, trying to get them from fall to spring and spring to fall and then to graduate. That first thing that happens is, I'm worried about this student. Can we help them? If we don't improve that, the rest doesn't matter. So of all the things we're going to talk about, this is probably the one I'm most excited about, because we have an infrastructure to follow up with it, we're tracking it correctly, and we see traction on the intervention, we see it going in the right direction. So it's one to watch and it's one to see how does that domino play out. And also, can you sustain it? So that's my challenge to you, right? I want arrows up next year again. Did you want to say something?
I was just gonna mention that as a retention tool, right, it permits the early interventions when there's concern. But a flag can also be raised to express a kudos, to affirm student success, which can also be equally motivating
And
for
keeping them.
students when their professor says, you know, you're doing a great job, keep it up. So I just wanted to share that I think those flags, and yes, the faculty have done a phenomenal job in communicating, right, that information to students in a timely way.
Yeah, and it is all about that.
And those significant,
Kudo to you, Laura. Huge kudo.
those significant jumps are due to the application of the faculty.
Yeah, so they use this software that, as I mentioned, we've had for about
So
a
they're on board
decade.
now.
They're on board, they're using it. I mean, it's a huge, I mean, those numbers,
Change.
they're very, very large things. I you very rarely get to say things like that, so it's very exciting.
Well, that's, it's transformative,
Yeah.
maintaining it, so.
Yes, exactly. So that's the next step, right? Can we maintain, can we improve?
Some of that affirmative feedback to the faculty, would be able to show them the return on their investment.
Yes. Yeah. And they, I think, again, I'm looking at my ASA colleagues here, but I think they've done a really good job at saying, this isn't going nowhere. We have these people at the ready, and this is what we're doing, and this is how they're following up. And then, so really sort of humanizing the student cycle. So in any case, a very, very large jump.
And that would like
I was
Go
gonna
ahead,
say, I'm happy to leave some space on an agenda in August, because I think that information,
Yeah.
as well as information you shared with Board of Trustees last time about closing that equity gap, are really motivating, and I think that would be great.
It's exciting, yeah. And yeah, just to follow up real quickly on the equity gap. So the PACE program in which we saw equity
Right.
gap closing, they make use of these flags. So it's not just all students, it's also our most, our high-risk students and those programs that are depending on that. So that's why it's just such an important sort of first domino, and that having numbers like this is so influential in the overall success of our strategic.
One quick other.
Yeah.
Starfish, obviously, you can benchmark. And I was wondering if we were thinking about how we can learn from that too, when we benchmark against,
Yeah,
because they keep the data for all the colleagues.
yeah, I am definitely aware of that. We have some data infrastructure issues with how Starfish speaks to our SIS. So don't want to make a promise I can't keep. It is on our radar. It's one of the things we're trying to do is to benchmark, whenever possible against whatever. That one, we haven't fully cracked the nut on, because getting Starfish to talk to our SIS is exceedingly hard. So it's taken us a while to get to this point, but it's still, we're working on it. We'll get there, but I don't know that it'll be by the next time I present.
No,
So
thank you.
just don't like to make promises if I'm not sure on the solution yet. But yes, and that's a benefit to using a software solution for some of these things, is they have a data infrastructure that we can make use of. Oh, and I skipped this because I got so excited about student success. Okay, so community and industry engagement, our last bucket to talk about today. What are our goals? We're looking at community partnerships. That's sort of the big piece of what we're really trying to look at. Increasing student and employee resilience through inclusivity, that idea that community is our community as well, and increasing alumni engagement and visibility. So we do not have markers on all of these yet. Some of the ones we are really looking at. So what we are tracking: alumni donors, events hosted on campus, applied learning opportunities, so our students in businesses in direct ways, and the building of advisory boards, which was a very specific call out in our strategic plan, that we want to make sure all our programs have direct contacts with businesses that are advising them on their curriculum. And I'll report on that shortly.
So alumni donors, this graphic sort of speaks for itself, have gone up a lot. So, we're really getting traction on that, particularly since, that 2022-23 baseline. And so that's exciting. And Bree is not here today. I know she's listening, she's sick. But they sort of see this as more, there's a lot more to come. There's a lot more to do. And one of their biggest projects, which is a strategic plan grant, is actually getting updated alumni data. So we've gone through that process and we did a contract with a company that got us that. And now my area is working with her area on actually beginning to push those data in and use those data. So in my mind, this is sort of like, even though we're past baseline, we almost have like a new baseline and we need to go from here, which is exciting. Also, the original goal we set was a 5% increase and we've already reached that over. So that's exciting, but more to come. And Bree would say she doesn't care and she's just excited to keep going with it. Because it was such a fundamental shift in the way that we're doing it. Events is another area that we're tracking, and this is another one where the numbers don't tell the full story because we're waiting to finish out a year. Just looking at the sheer number of events, it looks like, our events are way down, although we have the summer is the major time when those events happen. So we will likely hit the same number of events when we close out their year for tracking. But what is really exciting is at this point last year, if you measured it only to this point last year, they've already reached over 75% of last year's total in terms of the actual people engaging. So it's not just the quantity of event, but that more people are engaging in events, coming to the events, and we're becoming more of a destination for some of that work. So that's exciting, but a lagging indicator that I need to follow.
So you mentioned the word visibility in your last sentence.
Mhm.
Do events include CMAC, the 2025 concerts where 250,000 people came to that?
No, but I mean, I'd be happy to put them in there.
Well, but I mean, in all seriousness, those kind of numbers, 100,000, forgot the numbers, 100, 200,000 people make their way onto this campus. Some percentage, high percentage are not either aware or not there for academic,
Right, yeah,
purely entertainment.
Yeah.
But they're being exposed to the main campus with FLCC. So from a visibility standpoint, I would include the fact that 20 separate events, 25 separate events, that in fact are bringing X number of people, at least, to a portion of our campus on some level. Now, maybe that skews your numbers, but
Well,
it ought to be at least a footnote, in
Yeah.
my opinion,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
for what it's worth. It's
Um,
not insignificant. We're the only one out of 30 campuses that has a
That
performing
has
arts
that.
center
Maybe.
throughout the state of New York.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I imagine our partners at CMAC would also be willing to give me some of that information.
We have those, we have.
the president sits on the board, right?
But we, and, we get the numbers, but Beth's got her hand up.
I just had a quick question on the event count. Does that include like cultural events or department events?
Anything that's on the event calendar that we have a count for, but the idea here is that it's externally oriented. So if we haven't broadcast it externally with intentionality like that, then it isn't included. But for the most part, if it's on the event
I have
calendar.
lots of data for the actual.
Yeah.
And I would love to continue to see every time CBAC is mentioned on the campus of the Finger Lakes Community College.
I think that would be fantastic.
Every single
Yeah.
time. I mean, think of the PR that's done around 25 concerts, regionally, nationally, on the campus of.
The other thing we've done.
Should be part of our contract.
I don't, well, it'll become if Jeff can talk a lot about that, but, we also have to make sure, and I haven't checked this year, we've had advertisements that have been up there, they've got big screens, and there have been, FLCC advertisements, popping up, so when they do the rotation, FLCC's got them. We get to talk to Jenny on Friday morning, so.
There are a lot of voice boxes out there, including the radio DJs and all sorts of social media on the campus of.
Yeah.
It's not a big ask, it's one sentence, and, certainly helps the brand.
Good one.
So, yeah, great ideas, and I can definitely work up some numbers around that.
Moving forward in applied learning, we have seen a slow but fairly steady increase in those numbers. So we, we'll want to continue to see that actually continue to go up. And then I mentioned advisory boards. This is a call on the strategic plan. This is also a strategic plan grant. And I'm excited about these numbers where we see 6 new advisory boards already established, 3 in development, and 2 that are just beginning the process. Keeping in mind that we already had advisory boards for any applied degree. Every AAS already had it. So we're only establishing it for our transfer degrees. So by the end of next year, we will probably have fully met this goal, and all of our transfer degrees will have their advisory boards in place, which is great. The advisory boards are important because it does bring community members to our campus, but it also engages them very deeply. So it's a different level of commitment and connection than we see in having events that invite the community. Both are important. Both are things we've said we want to do from a strategy perspective, but they're different types of things. And once we have them established, then we also can begin digging in and saying, what kinds of people are on them, who's representing them, are there areas we're missing, are there things that we're not connecting with? So it gives us a new level of things we can set goals for, because we've gotten to that sort of base level of this is the minimum we expect.
Again, I have another question.
Yep.
Alignment of the workforce that you referenced. Are some of the representatives, how do I say this, the deciders, like the HR directors? It's nice to have the CEOs and presidents and top execs, but those that are doing the hirings, the folks that are the talent acquisition folks.
No, absolutely. And I would mention that, so we have each of our degree areas, the applied ones already have them. Those tend to be people very directly in the industry, very specifically, often HR, but also, a person with particular technical expertise that can advise on curriculum, things like that. And then we've also re-energized, Dr. Nye and our advancement team have re-energized the Presidential Advisory Board, which is another level of that, where we absolutely see the CEOs. That's that C-suite. Really CEO is the aim. And I think that has had one meeting it's sort of reimagined, but it's a both and. We need that deep engagement on multiple levels. So we're sort of off to the races in this goal. And I'm excited about that. But what you're suggesting, that's exactly the kind of analysis I want to be able to do in a year, when most of them will be fully established, have run once, we have and we can say, how many CEOs do we have involved? How many talent acquisition managers? How many subject matter experts from which counties? Like, there are good questions to be asking, because it then also allows us to say, here's an opportunity, here's an area we're missing. We're not engaged in this sector. How do we do better with that? And you can't do that if you're not looking at it, if you're not analyzing.
So the reason of the mention of HR is not just from acquisition, but they also think of, hey, this is a training arm.
Yes, absolutely.
Or HR may think that,
100%.
and the mindset of others may not. So not just from an acquisition, but wow, but look at the resources available that can help this organization from some.
Still are, yeah, absolutely. And it's that deep level of engagement that fosters long-term relationships. So moving forward, I think the big question in all of this, and you've heard the story that I've been telling throughout the slides, is, what are we measuring? How far are we in measuring it? And what are the interventions that are associated with it? What are we actually doing? Do we know what we're doing? How far are we in doing that? And those are sort of the key things that one has to assess as you're moving through the strategy, adjusting the strategy. So the strategic plan grants we've talked a lot about, and you've all have approved the new ones. So we don't need to spend a lot of time on that. You'll continue to get updated in the next year. But I do think it's interesting just to say, take this sort of 30,000 foot view to what is it that we're investing in? What areas have we put money into? And how are they going? So green means they're in full swing. Yellow means they're working, but maybe not everywhere they need to be. And red means we've run into some hiccups and we're working through them. So by and large, we're green. We're doing well. We have interventions in place. And that's what we want to be able to see and say and come back to you as the funders of these initiatives and say, here's where we are and here's how we do this. But for the most part, while these interventions are in place, they were in year one, right? And these 2025 projects, they come online next year. So we talk about lagging indicators, but sometimes we also need to talk about, I don't like the word lagging interventions, but in any given strategic plan, it takes time to figure out what you're investing in, get that up and running, measure it, and continually improve from it. So what I see here is we are doing a lot, and that's good, but we have to keep at it and keep seeing where we are with it as we look at some of those indicators. So I mentioned at one point, that's what I was looking for. Thank you. I mentioned I had a couple slides for you to share that are new. And we're still working on that. We're still working on how we're going to talk about this and look at it. And I wasn't sure I would share these with you, but Dr. Knack thought it would be a good idea. So it's your fault that I'm still talking.
So if you have questions, I don't know, it's my fault.
I feel like that's fair. So the strategic plan grants are very tangible, right? Someone puts in a proposal, it goes through this project, there's a rubric, we come here, we ask you if you approve, right? There's all these steps. We meet with them every single month. We're going over things, right? It's this huge operation. It's exciting, it's great, but it's very tangible. They aren't the only things that happen as part of the strategic plan. And something that we need to do a better job of is really making sure that our operational plans map directly to our strategic plan. And we know that the time and energy in operation is still connected to the strategy that this board has put out. I think we've actually done a pretty good job of doing it. We haven't done a good job of tracking it and saying, here's where maybe it's not working, right? And here's what we want. So this, we are beginning to look at very directly in every single unit's operational plan, which they map to their cabinet members' division plans, and those division plans are linked directly to the strategic plan. How many performance indicators, how many specific projects are linked, and they say, yep, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're working on student success. Now, these are just numbers. It's just a beginning way of saying, not just the strategic plan grants, but in the everyday work and the everyday operation, are we working on these things in direct, countable, and documented ways? So you see some basic numbers here. Now, some of these things behind them are really, really big projects, and some of them are not big projects. So we have to get better at sort of figuring out the best way to think through that and connect it. But what I'm excited by is it's there. It's happening. It's being documented. People are using the strategy to set their operational work. I will share with you that genuinely, I don't think that was really happening 10 years ago. I don't think we had an infrastructure where we were really looking at the goals that are set in the day-to-day. And yes, we had a strategic plan, but the interventions all happened with the strategic plan grants. It's not a bad thing. It was a great thing to start, but we need both. It's got to be both and if you want to have impact and move your numbers. So I'm not going to go into further ideas, but just to give you an idea of within those 45, sure, the early alert system that we just talked about is being tracked, but there's all sorts of other things, midterm reporting, expanded support service, all of those things are big projects that are part of the everyday operations that go into student success. Couple of ideas around opportunity and intervention. The AI work, all of the AI work is coming up through that, right? And same with community and engagement. It's a smaller number, but there's some really big things, right? The alumni engagement campaigns, that's an entire campaign that counts as a one under that number, but it's big work and it's operational work. It's not necessarily work that's funded by a strategic plan grant. So that I will pause there, see if you have any questions, new ways of thinking, new ways of reporting. And a lot of things we need to keep tracking and keep following up on. Any questions?
Go ahead.
My personal takeaway is that the stated goal, the data there has a direct correlation to not just thinking, but action, which to me all rolls up to a bit of a cultural
Yeah,
shift.
for sure.
Again, all of you are living it day to day. We don't see it like you, but there's a sense, there's a tangible, there's a sense, a vibe,
Yeah,
maybe a
for sure.
vibe,
I would
that there's a
agree.
bit of a shift that is happening in a positive way. So, just a takeaway, an observation, that's all.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Good question.
Any other questions? I know that's a lot.
Well, one quick one. First of all, it's fantastic. It's so encouraging. It's been quite a journey.
Yes,
And you know what? We're still marching up the hill. It's amazing. I don't know when it stops, but it's tremendous with progress. Do you ever see us, and this is kind of more hypothetical.
Yep.
Do you see us getting to the point where we'll be able to track student success to the workforce, to the community, to see how, you know, when we look at student success, where we'll be able to say, for instance, to the county, this is your ROI, and be able to have that on really kind of weave it right into the student success. See it ever happening? I know there's a lot of roadblocks as far as data go.
I mean, I don't want to say no, because I don't think the answer is no. I think that's obviously where we're trying to go. There are not clear sources of data on that. So it's not easy. I think there are some process pieces that even having strong advisory boards in place help with, because when you have strong advisory boards and you have strong contacts in your community, you have strong contacts at your employers, you have the ability to have different levels of conversation with how are students doing, how are they doing when they get there. Even if that's not maybe full, I do think the economic impact work that we did 2 years ago is important. And, something that we need to sort of keep in our repertoire and keep relatively current. It doesn't have to be done every year by any means, but, and while that is very high level data, it is, it's well sourced data, it's well thought out, the models are strong. And continuing to communicate that while we're sort of working through some of these other items, I think are possible. But it's important. It's important work. It's not easy work. So.
Kind of anecdotally, but it was what you're directly what you're saying, but through the great work of Rich and Fred, just having Misty Hall go speak to the supervisors last week.
Oh, you did?
For, privilege of the floor for 3 minutes makes an impact that it won't be the big one, but it's a very narrow focused one, and it makes an impact. And it was thoughtful, and it's not all the time. But it was very impactful to those. So.
It's a fine idea. We ever done that before?
I like that. That was Rich's idea.
Yeah. So that was a great idea.
I mean, I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, but just to play off of George's comments, understanding it takes time. But off and on, I hear any number of anecdotal
Yes, there's a lot of
stories
good anecdotal
of
data.
kids who started at FLCC and are enormously successful.
Yes,
But boy, it would be nice to be able to go to a supervisor's meeting and say, yeah, you invest this amount of money. Let me show you what you're.
yeah, how does that translate tangibly? Yeah. And I do think that primarily that's gonna be through economic impact, but our PR, our Marcom people do a good job of trying to collect some of that. Dr. Nye and I have had a lot of conversations about the community and industry engagement, part of our strategy, and that there is a tangible something happening that is nowhere in our metrics, and we're sort of trying to figure out the best way of beginning to capture that. But it is in the, who's at what meeting, when does FLCC get talked about, like, your example from your ARC meeting, or I was in a bid meeting that was very similar where, you know, they're just, the whole conversation is about what FLCC is doing. And I'm not leading that conversation, or Dr. Nye's not leading it, so we're witnessing that conversation. But that's another anecdotal intangible that we need to figure out, how do we weave that more tangibly into the story? I think Laura had a.
I was just gonna mention that Dr. Nye and I attended an Aspen Institute workshop last month at TC3. And they were looking exactly at that, is how we're looking at
Yeah, correct.
post-completion success. So whether that's workforce or transfer, right, how do we get that data back? So that is part of their
Yeah, they're
playbook 2.0 that.
And it is a really important transfer. We have pretty good data on, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that Aspen Institute, you know, this is a guided pathways model, and then, you know, the newest iteration of that guided pathways, right, is actually the workforce placement.
yeah.
And the Richmond Federal Data Study will help us.
Yeah, it definitely will help. I think the employer will
It won't be where we want to get, but
Yeah.
it's going to be farther than we are.
Yeah.
It'll also capture those non-matriculating students in Richmond, which we don't typically, and
So, you know,
huge value to the county, for sure.
when you
Oh,
say with the
absolutely.
welding program, you know, for instance, some of these
Yeah.
students are there and
Example.
they're all getting jobs and all getting good paying jobs. We have to work at how we shape that message, like you said, for the ROI, that the county's ROI, what resonates with them.
And I think from a strategic communication perspective, it's also about really saying, so we have these strategies in place. Well, what are the direct communication pieces? Who's communicating what? What's the narrative and to whom? Because all of that plays into the overall success of the strategy as well. But we're just now, I think, embarking on the, you know, as we go into a third year of the strategic plan, where you begin to have enough to really start doing that, right? So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Very good. With that, I'll motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Fred and, no, thank you. And all in favor? Aye.
Chair Martin, keep us marching up the hill.
Okay, welcome to the Finance and Facilities Wednesday, June 4, 2025 committee meeting. We'll call to order. We had a committee meeting on the 7th for a board meeting of May. Any changes to the May 7th minutes? Any capturing all that? Seeing none. Finance and budget update for the fiscal year 24-25. Welcome, Jason.
Good evening. So up on the screen right now is our results as of April 30th. Revenue to date, tuition revenue is up compared to last year. Some of that was looking at our summer tuition, which has held pretty steady even with our continued deregistrations throughout this summer. You know, the other thing that we have working well for us right now is our interest, idle cash is being held in interest-bearing accounts. So that is continuing to stay strong. We average about 4.15% in our CDs for interest being earned. That's held down in our miscellaneous revenue category. So other things that occurred in revenue this year, some of our fees, we did have an increase in our fees. Nursing fees were recognized this year, so those were increased. So that is also bringing revenue up slightly. Plus, our nursing program is becoming fully enrolled. So
The other counties, remember, you still believe by the time we get to the end of the fiscal year, we'll be 100%?
we should be right around budget.
Yep.
We do have, as of April, I think we still had some spring chargeback revenue that we need to bill. Summer, we anticipate about 700,000 that will come through that. So we should be in line. We won't be as high as probably where we were last year. Our chargeback rate did come down last year, so this year from last year.
Questions about the revenues?
How about our county?
Our county, the 150 should come this month, so.
Expenses.
Expenses, we're tracking well with expenses. You do see a larger increase between last year and this year. Last year, we are on a 27 pay period cycle versus this year, 26. So we have more expense being recognized earlier on. We don't hit our 3 pay periods again for this fiscal year until August. So that's when everything will kind of even out there. So equipment, supply and expenses, we're on track. We do have a little bit less in our supply and expenses that I'm anticipating just because of some of our scholarships for our Gemini program. Our Gemini program was down, so some of that scholarship will also be down. So and then utilities is tracking well.
Questions on the expense side? 2/3 of the way with the year roughly?
Yeah, 2/3 of the way. We will probably come out flat to be adding some to the fund balance this year.
Okay.
Again, some of that is in relation to, we budget at full salaries for the year timing of that. So if you don't fill a position, you get some salary savings there. Interest is another big one that, continue to play the game of when's the market gonna drop and, not try to continue to estimate, picked up close to $650,000 in interest last year. So I would anticipate that occur again this year. So, but, continuing to monitor that and see when that does play a factor.
Final questions on this year's budget expenses? Next year, 25, 26 is.
I just want to be able to look at this and. Okay, so. Okay.
Is this your phone?
Yes.
Share.
Right.
Good to connect. It's been having,
That's kind of fun.
yeah, like extended period of time.
All right. Yeah. So, agenda tonight is walk through our revenue, our executive summary as far as what we have come up with for our budget for 25, 26, and then shown some comparisons on where FLCC is in comparison to other community colleges across the state. So, go into the executive summary. Contractual salary and wage expenses, we're anticipating an increase of about $625,000. It's about 2.1% from previous years. We've had some retirements that occurred this fiscal year, so some of that salary savings has been built into that. We're continuing to work through our negotiations with our union groups. We do have some of that worked into this as well. But, we're continuing to budget at full employment. And where we sit there. So, contract negotiations will have some of that impact, on the overall increase as well. Benefit expenses, healthcare is, continuing to increase significantly. This year, our renewal is around 10% of an increase, from the prior year for our medical expenses. So with that increase in salaries, we're seeing about $750,000 increase in expense year over year. Contractual and supply expenses, 4.1%. A lot of that is our bad debt. continuing to look at and manage that. I think when we look at our summer enrollment, some of that, we have started to do a consistent deregistration. Continue and push that button because it's helping. You look at it, right, we could not do a deregistration, we'd have all the revenue, but in 2 years, I'm gonna come back to you and say, we have to write off the balance. So trying to manage that so we can look at how do we manage those expenses into the future. And I think we have a really good solution right now and looking at that and trying to solve some of that bad debt expense as we look forward. But what we do now, you won't see until a year or two down the road as we continue to look at that. The other big investment that we're making this year, and will show up in expense, but also be set up or offset in our revenues is our timely care. Timely care we purchased back during 3 years ago with COVID funds, investment into our mental health services that we're providing on campus. In the upcoming year, we will be offsetting those expenses with a student health fee, which we charge $18 per semester for students to be able to utilize that service. It's a service that they are unlimited use of mental health capabilities, but also it provides health services as well. So, and virtual.
Just a reminder, timely care is for, what's the right word, full-time or matriculated students?
Yes, it'll be all matriculated students, like both full-time and part-time. Any questions on expenses? Revenue, looking at increasing our overall tuition rate by 3.1%. It's continuing to offset some of the increases that we've seen with our state. So we have to keep trying to balance some of that with our budget and use of fund balance. We are expecting a flat, again, continuing to expect flat enrollment from increases from this year. And we may see some with the SUNY Reconnect program, but we have to continue to look at that and see, do we budget flat this year and then next year see what the impact of SUNY Reconnect is. An increase in our sponsor contribution of 3% from the entire year, also increase our revenues. And then our chargeback revenue will increase. Our chargeback rate is increasing as well. As expenses go up, our chargeback rate will continue to go up. And that will be offset by probably a decrease in interest income, depending on where the market goes. And then I do have an increase in our fee revenue from timely care and also the technology fee.
Just a question, the sponsor contribution, is the percentage tied to an indicator or is it a flat rate? Tied to the, it's the word I want to use, the Buffalo Feds.
CPI.
It's a flat rate.
Now, what they have done that is an improvement is they have promised us a 3% increase per year for the next several years that they hadn't done before. So if they've been doing that since the last time they gave us an increase, they wouldn't have had it done a big increase that they did.
Right.
So it is a flat rate. Jason's better than me.
It's a 3% rate. They've committed for the next 2 years at that 3% increase in their budget proposals. The other thing that's not included in here is their sponsor specific investment that's held offset off of the operating expense budget. So
25, 26, 26, 27, we have that 3% for the next 2 fiscal years.
yes.
Questions on revenues? Okay, keep going.
This is the overall summary of the total revenues, the categories, as well as the expenses. As you can see, I did also, for any non-salary related expenses, allowed a 1.5% increase just to help look at inflationary costs and trying to offset some of those. So departments provided a 1.5% increase in non-salary related expenses. As far as when you look back, looking on that screen and not this one. So as far as when we look at enrollment, I went back to before COVID. You know, we continue to stay right at the top, you know, and it kind of shows the strength of FLCC through COVID and what we've done here. Deborah, I think you told me that Columbia Green's numbers may not be accurate, but
Yeah, there are a couple of colleges that are facing a few data issues, so they're data now, exactly where they will end up. And Columbia Green's out.
with some of these, you know, institutions have had to make significant cuts because of the enrollments and the declines that we've had over the years. So
Yeah, so now bring the previous conversation around to this chart. You know, at least in terms of these numbers, all the efforts that we're doing to support students, keep them here and retain them, shows up in this chart. And the other aspect, what in the world is the bottom half of that chart doing just to survive? When you take a 30%, 32% loss in
Clinton's
students,
Virgin Potsdam from a campus
Okay.
perspective.
that's the answer.
Some of those, but you know, I think SUNY's seeing some challenges with that merger. And, you know, a lot of what they thought was gonna be shared resources, can't do shared resources, you know. And a lot of that we've raised as far as, you know, they talk about how do you share resources amongst community colleges? Well, we're on different bargaining unit contracts. Makes it very difficult to be able to do that, to look at that. You know, there is discussion on, you know, what are we gonna do in the future? What does the future look like for community colleges? And you have 84 separate institutions in New York State from a public perspective. So how are we starting to look at that? And you can all see the data that shows, you know, New York State's losing population of traditional students. So what are we gonna continue to look at and do that? So,
The other 5-year comparison is that investment by our sponsor has assisted, maybe, might be a story to tell there. It's an investment. Where that investment maybe hadn't been there, that certainly helps.
I mean, they're technically, they're still a few million behind where they could be in terms of the amount of support that our peer colleges our size are. But the commitment they gave us a couple of years ago is very, very helpful, and it's created a better partnership to do more. We need to get some of the off the sponsor funds onto there, and that's going to be one of the key things we have at our next county leader meeting, and was addressed with the administrator this morning, so that we can really start looking forward to next year's budget, so they can put it into their budget guidance. It wasn't in this year's guidance. They said keep what we have, but they still made the commitment to those funds. And we can use those funds for things that are good for the college. So I'm just thankful that we've gotten that increase, and, you know, should it be more than based on our size? Maybe, but it's not, but it's better than nothing. And so we use it, and it's helping.
Yeah. And I looked at some of these charts, and I looked at the one on, you know, our enrollment, and we're right at the absolute top of the community colleges. But then you look at the sponsor's contribution as a percentage of the budget, and we're almost at the absolute bottom.
Yeah.
And my point would be, there might not be any negative or decline in enrollment at all if we just had a little bit more help.
Yeah.
So we were kind of in the middle of the range.
Yeah.
We get more resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Because we're almost holding even over, at least over that 5-year period, with an absolute minimal amount of assistance.
Now, some of it, you know, we do get our chargeback revenue that is,
Yeah, and
you know, we're at towards the top of
yeah,
community colleges because of our service area. I think, you know, this year, you know, we hit every single county in New York. We had a resident come to FLCC.
FLCC, that's great.
You know, another great story and how FLCC's brand is making it across the state. You know, when Joanne told me that, my student accounts person, I was like, we're billing every single county in New York State. But I think it just is a great story to be able to show that we're recognized across the state as an institution to send students to.
But is it fair to say that the chargeback dollar and the amount and even the formula does not have a correlation to our county sponsor? Or does it have, let me ask it in the form of a question, does it have any correlation to our county sponsor investment?
It does not, right?
So the chargeback revenue that we receive is not a negotiating tactic with our county sponsor. But the fact we're near the bottom, and when might we begin those discussions? We're already into our budget year, we're gonna approve this pretty soon. And we're only gonna have 1 year left, so that conversations might be started soon.
In about a month is the next county leader meeting,
Okay.
to have a small group county leader meeting with the key people.
Great. People.
Just really up, yeah.
Tuition rates, we continue to remain in the middle of other community colleges. You know, based on the average increase, there was about 3.3% across all community colleges. So we held that 3.1%. Is what I'm recommending for this year.
Right in the middle.
Yeah,
And that FIT is off these charts, I mean, you typically. Excuse it, right?
they're probably the only other community college that bills 62 counties.
Yeah.
And
Our chargeback rate, we are seeing an increase in that this year, went from 30 to 50. And that's with, even with tuition increasing, our expenses are increasing. You know, state aid would be the other thing that could help offset a chargeback rate, so.
we still make visits to our neighboring counties. There's lots of counties, of course, but it's probably the top
I
5.
might have to this year because last year it dropped, so they were happy.
Have to take the chair or vice chair or somebody with you, right?
It depends, what we do once we know it's set, which we know will after we get done with the county, in the next couple of weeks. Then I reach out to the county administrators and let them know, hey, you're increasing this much. Here's some information for you. Here's where we stand. We're no different than others. And then if they ask for it, then we'll go visit. And, you know, they have a new administrator in Wayne County. Don't know how that'll go. Seneca's never been a problem. Yates still have a new administrator, so, don't know, but, we go. But what's helped is when we tell them early, and we need to tell them in June or at least the beginning of July that this is happening. So they, as long as they have it and they've built it in their budget, it's really brings down the need for their frustration.
Surprises.
And proactive.
Yeah, that's
Generous.
excellent.
And usually by early September, we do have chargeback rates for all community colleges, so, and where they'll start going, but through my discussions with other community colleges, I mean, that rate's continuing to go up as well, so.
Is I just gotta say it, the counties and the state look at us as the engine for workforce. But they ain't putting any fuel in the tank.
No one, very true. It's all lip service.
Yeah.
It's all falling to the student, and our student tends to be the most vulnerable, lowest income.
Or it's at least declining. There's a little bit of gasoline in that tank, but it's declining.
Fumes.
We get to go from station to station.
But, all right, just be part of the report. So this will go, my report will be less. But you do have little buckets of optimism. So the new SUNY Reconnect, the adult learner program, where those students get, those programs get to go to school for free, is a good thing. So it's not equal across the board, but that's one that will help out definitely. So the state is doing some good things. and they're putting some money into it to help us get it started and get it ramped up. So, I mean, we'll take the little buckets wherever we can because they add up.
And the state's putting $1 million into marketing. I think that marketing is gonna have a potential impact on other student recruitment as well. It's gonna help. This effort, so.
Slide we alluded to as far as the sponsor contribution percentage of operating expenses. Now, this is your straight sponsor contribution. It doesn't include the CIP funds that they invest in the college at 500,000. Doesn't include the restricted funds that they've provided us to use for additional equipment purchases that are excluded out of this budget. So other counties, they don't have, they have one sponsor, or they have one county that they're serving. We have a 4-service county area, 4-service area. So, that helps to benefit some of that as well. So,
Genesee, we're tied with at 7.9%.
yes.
Even flip that.
Yeah.
Hudson Valley's,
Yeah.
Hudson Valley sponsors Rensselaer, but they cover Albany County. So
Yeah, they get it.
that's, the chargeback is enormous there.
Revenues, sources, again, on this slide, really just trying to show where the burden is falling. It's falling in your tuition and fees. The fund balances continue to increase as state aid decreases, or it doesn't keep up with the increases that we're seeing in our expenses. Chargebacks continues to try to rebalance that slightly. That's where the impacts are. So if the sponsor contribution has no impact on the chargeback rate.
If you just look at that pie chart, or maybe a little bit of length of time, but you're working your way towards half the cost being tuition and fees.
Yeah, with no support coming from the state and the county, but costs going up, that fund balance becomes incredibly important. And with the uncertainty federally, health and so forth, that fund balance becomes pretty darn critical, I would expect it.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. And, over the years, and on the next slide, I think this one just kind of shows the revenue sources in a different manner. As we flip to, this slide here, right?
Right.
The blue line represents kind of where our fund balance has went. And yeah, we have picked up fund balance, but some of it we have to think about. We know what the future looks like. We've seen the declining, power. Fred showed us earlier, even with concurrent enrollment, that looks like seeing less students enroll in some of these Gemini courses. So when does that start trickling into community colleges? I mean, some have already experienced it, but in our area, when does that happen? And then when is that looking at, we're gonna have to look at the fund balance. We'll have to look at other things as we progress in the next few years here.
I want to say something that is important here. If you look at the dip, and this is all for record, it's already been talked about, it's in lots of videos. Our goal coming out of COVID was to at a minimum double our general fund, so that we would be able to do exactly what Jason said. But that means that you could invest in some other things, but we did a lot of investing in other things, and we also did well enough that we could increase the general fund even above what we did from using the COVID funds to do that. The reason that was important, if you go back, to be very explicit, when our general fund, when COVID started, was 5.6 million. That we had, and the state cut 20% of our state aid, it was $2.2 million. We had 2 years and literally really only had about a little over a year. We had 1 year period to make a decision. If COVID had been catastrophic and the government didn't do what they did, we had to make decisions on retrenchment in year 1, because if we waited till year 2, it was too late, we would potentially be insolvent. So part of this goal from where I sit and telling you all and telling the community was, we're going to make sure that we have 4 to 5 years of general fund built up to be able to strategize the difficulties that are gonna come down the road. That has to be an important message that we all have in a unified manner, because we have to have 4 to 5 years of funding for a catastrophic event, because it could come this year. It could come with the Pell grants. If, we're estimating worst case scenario that $2.1 million of Pell grant monies go away. How many students does that take away? And then what does that do to the enrollment that's there? So it's really crucial that we have a goal that we're gonna try to maintain, you can use the percentage. Or you can say, to me, based on where we're at, if it was 20%, we lost 20% of our state aid, 2.2 million a year. We have 4 to 5 years to be able to hold before we say we're insolvent. That's not without any other corrective measures, but that was something that was very clear that I was very focused on that we would achieve as a college, to make sure that we never got caught in that situation again, where we had almost no time to be able to do remediation before making decisions that affect lives.
Good strategy.
And this is strictly our operating fund balance.
Yeah.
We do have our restricted fund balance for the board and the strategic plan grants, which is about 1.5 million now. So there is some other funding.
So in this chart, you've shown at least or anticipated that fund balance might be as we look to 25, 26.
Correct.
Roughly 2 million, increase from 24 to 25, 26,
Yes. Right. Yeah.
2.1, whatever it is.
Yeah, but for, that was the starting balance. The fund balance, the blue line is your starting balance as of, 8/31 of the previous year. So we picked up, so this is really your 20, where we ended in 24, 23, 24. I think my dates are a little bit off.
So the last number we see at the top of the blue line, the 12 million, what is it for something?
The 12.4 is what we ended at 23, 24.
Oh,
So we will probably.
I'm sorry, I can't see the
Yeah, add to that
for sure.
because of interest and stuff.
Well, that message is also fiscal prudence. I mean, it does, it's not just a run rate, because run rates say, there's a cliff at the end, but it's more about the prudence. And it's a planning strategy. So, kudos. That's,
Well, and in some cases, it's the Pell Grant as an example. But it not only gives us time to figure out what we're gonna do, but it doesn't become an instantly catastrophic for the students. They want, they might get help from us directly, let's say, and they get a year or maybe a little more to figure out what their strategy is gonna be going forward.
and we then become a destination where others on a list may not have that kind of fund balance. They may not even be in that position to say, well, Pell grants are gone, I'm sorry. Maybe there is an opportunity for us to replace it on some level. And all of a sudden it's an increase in our numbers in terms of enrollment. So FLC is offering a grant to replace the Pell grant. Or whatever you say.
Anyways,
This shows our expenses and where the sources are. So personnel, employee benefits, 75% of the overall spend. But I would expect that
that's,
at an institution. I mean, so.
all about people.
But how do, what are ways that we can help look at that into the future? Health insurance continues to rise. We're fully insured right now. So how do you look at, do you maybe go self-insured? Is there an opportunity there as you look at a self-insured? Saving some funds or reset. You're not really saving, but you're kind of resetting the line or the premium increase that you may have. So you help offset it for a year and then that it'll continue to decline because healthcare costs will continue to climb. But you also have the retirement system and stuff that for the pension, so that's all included in this employee benefit. Salary increases go up. benefits will continue to rise as well.
Keep going.
This is just our actual costs, by function, our cost by function as a percentage of total costs, so it's just this slide to show, you know, where we sit compared to community colleges across the board, excludes FIT. You know, when I look at this, some of the instructional costs, you know, we're a little bit higher, but I think some of it, when I look at my maintenance and operational plan, we get a lot of funding from the county to help us offset some of those costs that other institutions are maybe using their operating dollars to help fund it and do some certain activities. Others higher because of our scholarships of our Gemini program. So that's what is driving that big offset of the 5.3%. Next slide is just about our budget projection. You know, continued increase in costs, you know, budgeting at full salaries. Continue to see the use of fund balance increasing. I was trying to pull slides I did 2 years ago to see where we've trended. Obviously a little bit higher because, you know, reset in our chargeback rate. Personnel and other costs continue to, you know, increase. Our bad debt allowance is another one that, you know, was running around $500,000 and we're continuing to increase that last couple of years as we came out of COVID. So.
Okay.
Next few slides just show, and I know that's really small, so just budget by each division and area, so. And then the last slide is just kind of the timeline. I did get confirmed with the county today that I'll be presenting this at the Ways and Means Committee next Wednesday. And then they'll initiate the public hearing, and then by July 10th, hopefully full by the Board of Supervisors for it. So.
Questions?
Well done.
Anything else? What we get in the resolutions and.
Terrific presentation. And I really like the way you disaggregated it and you're able to give us concrete examples.
Yeah.
Because when you look at it as an aggregate, you know, you look at 75 to 80% is personnel.
Yeah.
You know, so you got 20 left to talk about.
Yeah.
But you didn't take that approach. You took the approach of program.
Yeah.
And disaggregated it and showed us the challenges, showed us the expenses.
Yep.
Revenues, the challenges. I just,
Yeah.
nice job.
Thanks.
Great.
This was a Jim Fisher presentation, so I can't take all of it. They used some of those slides.
What do we call it? Cultural
Yeah,
relic?
I have a spin on it.
I was gonna say, headed for you all.
Yeah.
Just saying.
And I keep doing this later and later and not getting it to.
You do it with a smile on your face. Jim
Yeah.
is not so much.
Oh, no.
Are you on Ways and Means?
I'm not.
You're not. Yep. There's, that's still our friend Dave.
Yes.
Do we have
He's the
attendee
chair.
for support for Jason next week?
For the board, don't know. I'll be there for the one next week. I'm not sure I'll be able to go to the ones to the county itself, but for Ways and Means, I'll be there. But it'd be helpful for the two sessions. Really, we usually went to the one,
Public hearing.
the public hearing one, you know, and then, for instance, after they approved the increase, Joan, you and I went to say thank you. So, but the public hearing won't be good.
I won't be here. Yeah, I'll try to get on my horse early Wednesday morning. It's 1:30?
Wednesday's 3.
Oh,
Please.
then I'll have to get on the early horse.
Yeah.
Get on
I'll
the
be
range horse.
It will be there.
I'll be there.
Okay.
There you go.
That's the 11th?
3. One of the things I do want to talk about too is the state funding and the restricted funds that have been coming through the last 2 years. So last year, we received $209,000 in funding, which we're hiring some more personnel, which was asked for 3 personnel there. And then 103,000 was our mental health, which is director of our counseling services. This year, we had $160,000 for our SUNY Reconnect program. We're looking at how are we going to utilize that into the future, making sure that we have the right resources in place. And then they did have another $8 million that they held out to provide to us, and we had $253,000 of that allocation. A lot of this funding is additional costs, no, supplanting current operating expenses. When it's tough because as community colleges, we're looking at how do we, utilize the personnel that we have. We have increasing costs and salaries and benefits, and we're not able to offset that. And, one of the things that I think as we continue to move forward is how do we make those a little less restrictive if that's coming through? I know some of it was because of our ask for workforce and that, and, then it's driving into, well, do you need more personnel to be able to offset those costs? But, there is a need for just offsetting the basic operating expenses and the cost of living that, we do experience every year. And for us at FLCC, our enrollment hasn't really declined, so it becomes tougher to, look at certain programs and things, but there are avenues we can take, but how do we continue to kind of balance that into the future?
I can speak to that for just a second. The New York Community College trustees and the New York Community College presidents are in the process now of looking at our strategy, how we're going to approach the state this coming year. And there's I think some areas, we've learned some things and how we can get better. Before you wouldn't have even gotten what you got.
Yeah.
But we need more than just 30 presidents and 300 trustees, because that's 330 votes.
Yeah.
So, we're hoping to engage other partners, including NICET and other organizations like that, because there's a direct benefit to the whole, everybody, to raise this up and cover the costs that we have. We cannot, the state has determined that it's no longer a third, but it's flat.
Yeah.
And that the county can be flat, and that the student will bear all the costs of increase. And we can't do that. We can't. So we have to, well, we're getting to an inflection point, but I will say that there's a real commitment. I know you've got a solid commitment from the presidents and from, if I may say so, Rob, and from the trustees. We need more. We need pretty much your cousin, your uncle, here and around the corner.
So is the
everybody.
NICET union is an idea or is it fact?
We've talked to them a bit about this, but it doesn't necessarily rise up to be their priority, because their priority comes from their membership. And I think we're developing better relationship, more trust. We've had some very frank discussions with them, and we're just going to continue to build that. But they respond to their membership, so the more we can get students, faculty, everybody, making the political environment a little more toxic. That's the only way we're going to get change.
It's a big union. AFL-CIO, the other unions like that are underneath conversations. What about the unions that are represented in our campus?
Well, there are other unions. We are talking to them as well. The big one is, the big dog is. Yeah, and what the union has the sway that we don't. We go in, it's like, okay, well, 330 of you guys, you know, you're not gonna impact my livelihood, but I said, didn't scare them.
Big election year next year too.
It is. We've got some thoughts along those lines, don't we, Donna?
And New York State Council of School Superintendents might be another.
We've spoken with them. They were more reluctant because they wanna, there's this fear that there's a pie and, I don't want anybody to get near my slice. So it gets very protective in that regard, but, if we don't cover base expenses, it's gonna be really hard to maintain faculty and all the resources we have. And there's so much investment to put into them so far. It would be an absolute shame to lose that because they're incredibly valuable.
Certainly having the CCBOA.
Yeah.
Is part of the whole
Yeah.
support discussion.
Yep,
Good news.
I know a few people there, so.
Encouraging news.
We're working at.
Resolutions. Stuff is.
That's not here, so I'm not tonight.
Well,
It'll be Deborah and then it'll be me again.
take it away.
I click on opportunity?
Hey, Jason.
The first two are Pirelli services that we continue to, need and utilize, throughout the year. So, both of these are, those continued services, and providing support where we need with colleagues.
Questions? Keep going.
The next one is, accepting the quote for our Space 36. This is to put a sign on top, which meets the requirements for, I guess I would say the bid or the city. So it's been approved by Canandaigua City Council, so we should be pretty, I don't think Deborah showed you the picture, but I'm sure she has one. So. The next one is to authorize a contract renewal for our timely care services. These amounts are estimates. I would expect them to come down, so they're not to exceed these amounts. So, this is for our mental health, medical care counseling services. So. Okay. The next one is our tuition schedule. This one is to approve the 3.1% increase in our tuition rate. This way. The next one I have is the student services fee schedule. I do have a correction that I do need to make in here. Technology fee is actually going to be $22, and then the online services fee would be $16. So I do need to make that correction to this. So numbers moving as we.
We're gonna want to amend that. I'm looking at Penny over there.
Yeah.
So we'll want to amend it. We'll ask Jason for then we get to the full meeting.
Okay.
Once you finish with the last one, then I have a comment.
Okay. And then there is a new fee for nursing, this ACE map services that we are, that are being charged to us as well. So.
Technology, online, and nursing. Got it.
Yeah. Last resolution is to approve the operating budget. It was presented here today for the 53,357,383, and then the sponsor contribution of 4,197,000. So this is what I submit to SUNY for approval of the overall budget.
So for the entire board, on the recommendation of our leadership, which I support, we're gonna call out the tuition, student services fee and operating budget as opposed to just roll it into an amended, or excuse me, a consent agenda. So we'll call that out when we get to the full meeting and ask for Jason's amendment around the budget with those student service fees. Okay, final questions on resolution. Informational.
Informational, so this is continuing our janitorial services for Geneva and Viticulture. We do have a job posting out there for custodian services, but this did actually just get approved for the HELPS program. This is a CSEA position, so no longer need to be tested and be hired for any applicants and doesn't need to go through a testing process anymore. So hopefully we'll get some candidates for that. But Sheen and Shine continues to be helping us service that need right now.
Great.
And the last one is our budget transfer report. In between budget categories.
As we adjourn the August, thank you, Jason, very much. Final questions of Jason? Anything else you want to offer?
Just one last public announcement is Kathy Ahern, our current Director of Facilities and Grounds, is retiring July 2nd. So, just want to publicly thank her for her services over the past, I think almost 10 years now. So she was a great addition and has really helped keep our facilities pristine condition and, be sorely missed. And, I know she helped bring me up and learning all of the processes and with the state and the CIP funding that we do get, but, just really appreciate everything that Kathy's done for FLCC and, she'll be retiring and, enjoying her home and her gardens and everything, but, just been great getting to know Kathy and I just wanted to recognize that, so.
And great work with the county too. She's been very involved in any construction project, renovation project, the county planning department, which surely appreciate her efforts.
So, well said.
But she's sticking it out to the end. She was in there with the folks after the groundbreaking at Mueller Real Estate, working with the architects and the builders the other day. It's like, nope, Kathy's still in there, get out of the way.
Yeah, there may be some working on a contract with her to have her help out with a few things.
That's
Great. So as we adjourn our August 6th meeting, I'll turn to Trustee Hassels to lead that meeting. I'll be away. I'll ask for adjournment or motion, please, to adjourn. Thank you. A second. Thank you. Chair Russell, back to you.
At this point, we're going to make a short detour to the annual meeting. We all have an agenda in front of us for that. I'll put on my glasses so I can read it. We're going down memory lane and I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve the annual meeting minutes from June 5, 2024.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Did you have those, Penny?
Steve and John.
Okay, thank you. If there are no additions or corrections, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we have approved minutes. The next order of business is to approve the Board of Trustees meeting calendar for the 25-26 school year. So the motion on that.
I'll make it.
I'll second it. That was Astles and Cushman. We can't have any corrections. Any comments? Not, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And Trustee Martin, do you want the official depositories pulled out?
Please.
We'll deal with the official depositories as an individual item. The next motion that I will ask for is to approve the resolutions for the trustee officers. Did you get anybody, John? Did you get anybody to serve for next year?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
They don't know it, but go ahead.
Are you making that a motion?
Yeah.
I'll move.
We're gonna put that into a consent agenda for sure.
Yeah. I'll move that.
And a resolution, we'll do these individually. Okay. So I have a motion for board officers. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Mahalik. I'm not asking for comments or corrections because there's no time to back out. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Opposed? Great. Resolution to designate the 25-26 FLCC official newspapers, and those newspapers are,
We still have newspapers, yes.
It's, the Messenger and the Shirley Times.
okay,
The resolutions are in the packet.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I'll accept a motion on those.
Oh, I will.
Oh, thank you. Second. And a second. Did you get those, Benny? Okay, great. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then the next one is the official, resolution to designate the official depositories. Okay. I'll accept the motion on that.
I'll move.
Moved by trustee Cookman, seconded by trustee Willie. Discussion, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I'll abstain.
Oh,
One abstention,
one
please.
abstention. And the final resolution is to approve the reimbursement of 25-26 necessary expenses incurred by members of the FLCC Board of Trustees. I'll accept the motion.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Okay,
You missed one.
Yeah.
we missed a vote?
One of them. Let's see.
Well, let's finish this vote.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Which one did I miss, Penny?
Resolution Assistant Secretary.
Oh. Oops. I knew I needed new reading glasses. I'll accept the motion to appoint an assistant secretary to the FLCC Board of Trustees. Many apologies, Penny.
I'll move it.
Second.
Did you get those? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. And now I will accept a motion for adjournment from the annual meeting.
I'll move.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Did you get those, Penny?
George and Donna.
George? George and Donna, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Would we like to have a 5-minute stretch break before we head into the real meeting?
No.
No, it's good.
We're gonna roll on.
We're tough, we're tough, Rich.
All right. Let me find that agenda. Okay, here we go. I'm going to call to order the June 4th, 2025 meeting of the Finger Lakes Board of Trustees. We are open for community comment. Is there anybody in the room or online willing to provide a comment? No comments? Okay. And as Chair Martin pointed out, we are going to pull the tuition schedule, the fee schedule, and the budget from our consent agenda. So next up, I will call for a motion to approve the consent agenda for today's meeting.
You gonna take all three of them separately?
That would be Chair Martin's responsibility to take them separately
Or
or
as a
as a block.
Bob?
Okay, so this is,
We've already pulled them.
yeah, this is,
Highlighted them.
yeah, this is a motion on the consent agenda minus those 3 resolutions.
I'll move that.
Thank you.
Second.
Did you get those, Ben?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions? Okay, okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good. And now, for those 3 resolutions.
So I would suggest that we take the tuition schedule and the operating budget together. And then we'll come back to amending the student fees. So I'd make a motion that the 2025-2026 tuition schedule and operating budget as submitted by our CFO be, that's my motion.
I'll second.
And we have an amendment to those?
Not yet.
Oh, the fee schedules.
Fees separate.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments? We've heard the presentation. Everybody's had a chance to ask questions. So I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the tuition schedule and the operating budget as presented by our CFO, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Then I propose the 2025-26 student services fee also be approved with the following amendments, and I'll defer to our CFO to let us know what those amendments are.
Following amendment would be to decrease the technology fee currently on the resolution from $30 to $22. In the previous year, it was $20, so it's an increase from the prior year, $20 to $22. And then also including an online service fee. Previous year, it was $18, decreasing to $16 per credit hour.
Was there also a nursing?
Nursing fee was in there. It was just a highlight of the new fee.
Would you care to have a vote on the amendment? And then a vote on the full?
I'll just acknowledge the amendment, part of my motion. I'll acknowledge the amendment by the CFO as part of my motion.
Very good. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
You have that all for us, Penny?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I bypassed the first reading of the bylaws for the trustees bylaws. We've all received those and we will act upon those when Chair Cass comes back at the August meeting. Okay? Now, didn't know Don was this busy. Holy cow. Is there any old business? Is there any old business? Here, see no old business. Is there any new business? No new business. The chair's report, well, I'm just glad we made it this far, so let it roll. President's report.
See, as we said, we're gonna be brief since, this other activities. Just a few things. One, the CHRO search, we had our first session with JK Executive earlier this week and, really excited with the, search committee. Deb Orloff is the search chair for that and, had a really good session with the members of the search team. And, the goal is to have finalists on campus the first or second week after school starts. They'll be working over the summer a little bit. Most of the legwork will be coming by JK Exec, and the goal is to have new CHRO on campus, at the beginning of October. So second thing I just wanted to put out, as you know, we had the bomb threat, and I just want to commend everybody that was involved in that because I don't think we could have done it any better in the moment than we did. And every single situation like that, my personal experience is going to be different. And it was handled very, very well. But then we have to be very critical upon ourselves, and we did a very good AAR afterwards to be able to see what are the other things we can improve upon. People are working on that in mid-July. Beginning of mid-July, we'll have what are the things we're going to improve that we can act during our next emergency operations. I'm drawing a blank on the Emergency Operations Center. EOC exercise will have in early August, so we keep continuing to get better. But I just want to let you know that. And then finally, the AI conference session with the Chamber of Commerce is June 11th. If you have the ability and you want to attend even part of it, please feel free to do so. Deborah, you said yesterday 126 RSVPs?
We were at 140.
Oh, okay. And
Wow.
this is one of the things when we talk about community engagement and influence, and starting to work for that, for doing things. And finally, I would like to invite the board to the GED graduation that will be next Thursday at 7 p.m. On the campus in stage 14. If you have ability to get there for a few minutes, the stories are heartrending. They're usually told, and it's one of the best days of the year. Mr. Chair, that's my report. Subject to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Any questions? Okay, let's roll on. Well, the first one on committee and liaison reports already happened, so we won't bother to ask Trustee Astles how that turned out. I would note under the student trustee report that we are so appreciative of Trustee Misty Hall for all of her work, community work, as well as her scholarly work and her transition on to Nazareth. And let's let the record show that we gave her a standing ovation for her work. FLCC Board Development Committee, Trustee Mahalik. Okay.
One resolution,
Student success policy.
success policy that's in Geneva. Underneath the first read.
Oh, I'm working off of an old piece of paper. Sorry about that. Thank you for reminding me. So I'm going to ask for approval of
Student success policy.
approval of the FLCC Board of Trustees expectations for student success policy.
And that's first read.
And that is the first,
No, that's to approve it.
That's our,
okay.
Last,
So I'll be looking for a motion in a
I
second.
will move.
second.
You have multiple seconds? Ben?
Take your choice.
Virgin Dome, right?
That'll work.
That's right, it'll work.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. FLCC Association, was Chair Cass. He left, did he leave us anything?
He has a report.
Okay. Reports in the package, thank you. FLCC Foundation, Trustee Geis.
Last Monday was the, golf tournament. It was cold and it rained. But people continued playing in the rain. It was very nice club, and I have not heard yet what the final amount will be. That's all I have.
Thank you. Next up is the NYCCT Liaison, Trustee Cushman, Trustee Mahalik.
I'm gonna take a minute on this, if you don't mind. Back in, February, this board passed a resolution 06-25 to engage council to challenge a resolution from the SUNY Board of Trustees called Strengthening the Community College Presidential Search Process and Ensuring Transparency and Accountability. We've had a long road on that. We've had negotiations with the chancellor and his council. It was challenging. We got to somewhat of a framework for an agreement. It was turned over to council, their council and our council to resolve and put in the details. And frankly, their council really never, they missed meetings. They came unprepared. They were not serious about this. We were ready to just drop the whole thing, and then Ian Rosenbaum and I wound up, he and I negotiating terms. And we presented those terms to our, the plaintiff colleges, where there were 19 of, including this one. And several counties were signing on also. They did not want to budge. So we were, at that point, we were going to be on Friday, after tomorrow, serving papers and filing. It got really challenging this past week. As a matter of fact, we've had some holdover governor appointees that were informed by their local elected officials that if they didn't drop the suit, that they would be dropped by the governor.
Resolution.
It was, you know, there was a few moments there of, you don't want to blink. Subsequently, yesterday, SUNY Board of Trustees adopted a resolution that authorized rulemaking, which was the key to our case. So the case was about selection of the president, the process of selecting a president, process of the president's contract, and not only a new but a renewing president, and their approval of the contract, which they have no legal authority over. And the third thing was basically there's a specific term for it, it's escaping me, but the temporary acting president, but it's an administrative officer or something of that nature is what it's called. Those we're opposed to those, but really at the heart of everything was that the executive branch, of which SUNY falls under, does not have the right to create rules. Legislature does. There's something called this State Administrative Procedures Act, SAPA, which we initiated. That was really at the heart of the case. So what the SUNY resolution has done is to take and roll back all of those presidential search items and basically declare, because there was 4 searches during it, that it was a successful pilot, and there had to be a way for people to come out saving face.
Right.
That absolutely had to. And what and they've initiated in their new resolution the SAPA. So they'll be re-proposing these, which they have the right to do. And what I want to say is that, you know, in the negotiations that I had with Ian, those have been modified quite a bit. They came back quite a bit. And they were honorable, and it wasn't with the lawyers, but it was with Ian. And we got to a point where it's much better. So those will be coming out probably on Tuesday. That will be announced. And there will be a process for filing. We will be inviting every trustee in the state to get an update like you're getting right now. And we will be preparing some material to help them, guide them through that period of challenge. Now, we want no more than the trustees. Again, we want to get the county elected officials. We want to get our local assembly persons, our local senator. We want basically everybody we can get to weigh in on this. Will it make a difference? I don't know. But if we can make it politically toxic enough, we can potentially get these things fought back. The key here is that, in the win, is that while this was initial, the initial was called the something in transparency. Oh, ensuring transparency. Oh, sure. This was not done transparently, and now SUNY has to play by the rules, and the SUNY board has to play by the rules. So we take this as a win. But now we will shift from legal, which honestly, I'm happy not to get phone calls like at dinner time when I'm celebrating my son's 51st birthday on Sunday, you know, those kind of things. You know, I mean, it's been constant, but we'll switch to more of a communications focus to not only have folks respond to this appropriately, and the reason we're going to prepare material is because if they do breach again, how we respond is important. So to build a case. And I think that's pretty much it. But the other thing we will be doing is there will be press releases, there will be a number of things. This came out a little bit in an article by Newsweek in Nassau County because of what's going on. Newsday. I'm still adjusting to this area. I still haven't fully. So, you know, some of this was folded into that story, but we are going to be creating some press releases and things of that nature. So, it really becomes the issue for us is local control. And local control is important. It's critically important because roughly half the students that we serve are matriculating in under SUNY.
Yeah, New York is a home rule state, so local control is at the heart of home rule.
Absolutely at the heart. And this impacts, this is why like, a number of counties were signing on as well, because nobody wants to poke the bear. And there was some colleges and some counties didn't want to get involved because they didn't want to poke the bear. We did poke the bear, and then we turned and we faced the bear. And I think we've come out with something good. I do want to emphasize that my discussions with Ian, while they were difficult at first, they got to be very productive, and he was very honorable. So when they put these things back in, they're the adjusted. They didn't have to do that. So I think we don't have to. You know, we need to rebuild the relationship. So, but I wanted to make sure everybody was aware you all voted for this. That's where it's at, and that's the.
Do you want to mention the public hearing?
Hmm?
Do you want to mention the public hearing?
Public hearing.
So because they will now be officially following the rules of developing.
It's not a public hearing, it's a public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a public comment, which will be announced on Tuesday.
So that's open for a period of time typically.
30, 45 days, something like that. We did it in the federal government all the time. Anytime we were creating a rule, we had to go through that process, and you know, we did log every darn one of those comments.
Will that follow a public hearing? I mean, if there's usually enough comment.
I couldn't say. I don't think they have to. I think they can close the public comment period and then do what they're gonna do. But we have a chance to jump up and down on the issues that we believe are critical to our future. You know, the things we do for the county honestly can't be run centrally out of the state. They have to be to the county, which is why I'm here as a county appointee. And that's why the president has to have that flexibility, not to be under the impression that he works directly for one person at the state. So that's my lengthy, detailed report, but based on our resolution, I feel I had to resolve an open resolution. And we're now not going into court, so everything's been moved on.
And
Which I think that's remarkable.
while they're,
What you have moved. I mean, it is like moving the mountain. And I think you're right. They're gonna take us seriously now. I don't think they ever took us seriously before, do you?
And
it's different.
it'll, you know, I don't know that there's gonna be like a Shazam moment
Oh,
here,
no,
but I think, you know, I do think that they will be a little bit more, I think they have to. And like I said, they cannot, they won't be able to go ahead and do this again. Now, they did it several years ago when they put in the original guidelines. And unfortunately, at that time, it wasn't noticed and nobody challenged it. That would have been the weakest part of our case. But this, now that we've got this, I think we're in, we're in a position, we just have to be vigilant.
And I think the needle has moved. Again, not the Shazam moment, but the needle has moved. And while there are an enormous number of people who put endless hours and energy into this, I cannot emphasize enough, this would not have happened without George Cushman.
Sure.
So,
No, I had a lot of support, and I've still got some trustees that really want his head on a platter, so, and I'm probably the most moderate of them all. I
George has
think,
been civil, although possibly with a bloody tongue, from my way back.
Civil but tough.
But yes.
oh, as I said to, Ian, do we have a deal? And I said, Ian, you've got one boss, I've got 299. Got all of you.
First of all, thank you, as others have stated. Have we found any additional support beyond the original 19 that have come aboard and said, yes?
Yeah, there's a couple more that are finally getting around to doing the resolution. But there's also some kind of,
Sorry.
there's some,
To Empire Drive, then take the first right.
Where are we going?
there's also several counties that we're signing on.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, so there's several counties that are signing on.
And the president,
But at this point, that's all, but the case is there. We're well prepared in the future.
I was just gonna say, it gives you an opportunity, if you're able to add to the 19, 22, 23, whatever the number is, next time there's a curveball. 30 presidents, of the 30 presidents, did it reflect the same 19? Was it more or less that were in fact lockstep, or was it?
This was not a presidential issue. I've kept the presidents completely out of it. I've kept,
That makes sense.
there might be one or two that I kept confidentially informed. But this is one of those issues. This is a trustee issue, not a president's issue. It impacts the presidents. I know they were behind what we were doing, at least most of them.
Okay.
But there's certain instances where we need to be the tip of the spear.
These 4 searches that were deemed successful, I think was the word you used.
Yeah. Yes, based on what the feedback from the colleges, they felt it went smoothly. At the end of the day, I think the way I'm gonna respond to the public comment, the contracts, I think is where but I got a feeling it's political. I think the contracts thing is because of the Hudson Valley situation. There was a payout of the president was terminated for cause. He did not get a severance. He did get unpaid leave and stuff like that, which came up to 69,000, which is not an unreasonable thing, but it's being blown way out of proportion. As I said to Ian, you've got a dozen colleges that are bleeding millions of dollars a year, and help me square this circle. Can't figure it out. But with that president going out and it being so close to Albany, and the folks that they wanted to bring in, one of the folks that was trying to get in, it was a rock throwing partisan of the other party. And they didn't want that in their backyard. So they're trying to, I think, That's my theory.
So the expenses, any legal NYCCT through its budgeting process is we incurring that? Might there be an assessment?
No, we spoke earlier of the importance of reserves for important things that you have,
So
don't
NYCCT.
know are coming around the corner.
Good.
This was ours.
Okay.
And it, but you know what, we feel it was money well spent.
But my final, and you referenced this, when there's negotiations and maybe one side views it as less successful or a loss, the ability to try to come together, knowing that there's still a working relationship or more, with a focus on students. But that's still an intent of NYCCT?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Matter of fact, our upcoming conference, the theme is going to be around dialogue.
Invitation to the chancellor possibly to come to once again.
Well, we'll have him in and Tom Waddell, tell him again, not feeling the love, Chancellor. But he's, you know, he's stood up and
He's done it to his credit.
I think, yeah, to his credit, I think there's hard feelings by the presidents, if I can speak for the presidents and the trustees, that he takes a lot of credit for things that we put a lot of hours into and made a lot of movement on. But
Again, I'll speak from one perspective, but the environment for community college presidents in this state certainly has maybe taken a little bit of a tarnish in terms of future candidates that might consider coming to this state to be a community college president, if in fact this were to be the environment they may or may not work within. So it's,
attraction,
don't quite know what that means yet, but certainly can't be helpful.
attracting and retaining presidents was foremost in our minds. So yes.
Thanks for the update, keeping us informed. Thanks for your leadership on this as well.
And I just had one ACCT piece to add, as a member of the membership and education committee at ACCT. April is Community College Month, and I should have been a little more proactive about this. Rob had said to me, he sent me something that we had done as a college and said, is this what you were thinking of for us to help promote Community College Month? And it was, I thought, an excellent start. It was one step, at which point I realized they did not have all the tools that ACCT provides and gives guidance on as to how one could submit it. So I sent that off to Rob with my apology that I did not get that to him sooner. And immediately he passed that along, and additional things were done to strengthen that support for Community College Month. And I just want to say thank you for doing it.
Well, you know, the the legislature create a resolution supporting community college month for April. So we have a copy of that. We just got real recently, last few days. So we can put that somewhere in a notable place for the trustees.
So we'll be prepared, I think, a little bit better in future years too.
And then the other thing, couple of things for trustees. One, the date's coming up, I think, next week for NICET, NICET awards for fall.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure we offer our help for anything you want, for any of the nominations or things you want to do
Yeah.
for that.
I will be in touch. I know that there was consensus around
Okay.
a submission.
Because
So
we want to help. And then we did submit 2 proposals for ACCT in October in New Orleans. So hopefully that will go as well too. All right, 2, but one of them's for fully just trustees.
Right.
Based on,
Was it the AI one?
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the, real quick on NYCCT, we've done a white paper on exactly what we're doing here, but statewide. Hub and spoke approach with AI and doing exactly what Dr. Nye is doing here with engaging the community And we've got some early results from Mohawk Valley where it's, you know, it's bringing a lot of folks into the college. It's getting a lot of employers engaged. They're coming back and saying, you know, can you do a deeper program for us in this industry, X industry, Y industry, and so forth. So it's got legs, and we're hoping to get that working with CUNY as well to bring that statewide to be declared.
That'd be the funding, which you're working on.
We're working on not only funding, but almost like we are the resource for doing this.
So we said, Dr. and I, it's really the AI think tank, and then for the event coming up on June 11th, it's really Deborah, Ryan McCabe, and Professor Dave Cadu, who've really been leading the charge on that. So
You really appreciate what they're doing because this is huge for the college. And so that's all my report on the student corp design and the packet. Taking up enough time. Sorry to take up so much time.
Well, thank you, George, because
Well worth it.
Very a lot of work.
and it's a confusing issue if you're on the outside looking in, but you've made it very clear to this board, and I'm sure that everybody you deal with now has a complete understanding of what the deal is and how we can take the next step to put some transparency in the process. Well, just when we thought we were done, I'm going to call for an executive session to discuss the help me with this, Penny, employment
Yeah.
of a person or a group of people. How am I doing with that?
You're doing good.
Pardon?
You're doing really good.
Okay, well, that's as far as I could get.
You can't read it off?
I don't have it. I'm working off of an old agenda. I took my notes from last week.
Jeff has it.
Then,
Discuss the matters regarding the employment history of a particular person.
okay,
You need a motion to go into executive session?
yes,
Yeah.
please.
I'll make it.
Second.
I'll defer to Joe. Go ahead, Joe.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And we will not be taking any action once we leave this meeting.